Is it time to give Marc Guiu a run in the team? Should we go back in for Diego Moreira, who could be very cheap in January instead of spending lots of money on new players? Or is an 80 mil bid for Morgan Rogers really the way to go? Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And today, we're going to be breaking down Marc Guiu's impact on the Nottingham Forest game and talking about whether it should really be time for him to get a run in the team. There have been some talks of Chelsea going back in for Diego Moreira from Strasbourg due to his heroics in the Strasbourg PSG 3-3 draw. There is some talk about going back in for Diego Moreira, and the news about Morgan Rogers just won't go away. But guys, before we get into it, if you're enjoying the content and would like to see more, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Right, so we're going to start with Marc Guiu. Now, I've been a massive advocate of Marc Guiu for a really long time, even going back as far as last season. Obviously, we picked him up for so cheap, man, so cheap. 5 mil from Barcelona, and he'd scored a goal in La Liga for Barcelona that was a really important one that won him a game. And he's got all of these attributes, right? These great attributes. Like, don't get me wrong, he's not piling away numbers. And, you know, that is the absolute obvious caveat to talk about with Marc Guiu, is he's not like a marksman like João Pedro or even Liam Delap or something like that. Do you know what I mean? He's still got a lot of work to do there. But the lad is just 19 years old. But what he does have is relentless pressing energy, man, and he occupies that striker space like no one we really have got at the moment, because obviously Liam Delap's injured, and Liam Delap, although they're not exactly the same player, is probably more similar to Marc Guiu than João Pedro is. João Pedro likes to drop deep, right? We've seen that a lot recently, and that's going to form part of the conversation that we're going to have today. And Tyreek George just doesn't really do anything when he plays a striker for us, does he? Let's be completely honest. So in the Nottingham Forest game, we started with João Pedro up top, and we went for a 3-man midfield of Romeo Lavia, Andre Santos, and Malo Gusto. That is really harming our attacking impetus. Do you know what I mean? Especially when you consider how much João Pedro likes to drop deep. Now, I was talking about this on my stream. We did a watch along, me and Kai from Behind the Dugouts for the Forest game, and I was talking about this on the stream. João Pedro plays really well as a striker when he's got someone like a Cole Palmer behind him, because Cole Palmer has always got, as much as he's great at being deep and creating and that kind of thing, he also really excels at getting forward, right? So João Pedro can afford to drop deep because Cole Palmer's probably going to take up that position at some point. But the rest of the players we've got who play that position, Enzo Fernandez, Buonanotte, Esteval Willian, but we haven't really seen enough of him there to judge, to be completely honest. But the rest of these players don't really do that. So what happens when João Pedro plays as a striker and we don't have a Cole Palmer type in the number 10? João Pedro drops deep to try and collect the ball because that's naturally his inclination. He's a 9.5-ish kind of player, do you know what I mean? You know, someone said, I can't remember who it was, but someone said he's like a 9 with the mind of a number 10. So he's always looking to drop deep. And when we've got Lavia, Malo Gusto, and Andre Santos there, then all of a sudden you've just got loads of midfielders, and your only real forward attacking outlets are your wingers. And it's harder to get towards goal because you've got to cut in and do lots more running and stuff like that, haven't you? So that's the issue with playing João Pedro as a striker when someone like Cole Palmer isn't there. Now, as soon as Marc Guiu came on, João Pedro got dropped into the 10. João Pedro has basically looked like he's gone missing for like the last 8 games now, man. And he hasn't scored for 9, actually. But he looked a lot more involved and started to look dangerous again as soon as we put him in that number 10 spot. Now, like I say, I think long term, obviously, the idea for the team is you have Cole Palmer, don't you? But we are going to be without him for 6 weeks. That is just the ostensible truth. We are going to be without Cole Palmer for 6 weeks. So when Marc Guiu came on, and João Pedro drops into the 10, everything just started looking better. And a big reason for that is Marc Guiu doesn't drop deep. Do you know what I mean? He presses, he runs constantly, harrying, running at the opposition, being an absolute nuisance. And that creates space and gives the guys behind him a lot more time and space to kind of make things happen. So with Marc Guiu, it's not necessarily about will he score goals. Now, we'll get onto that in a minute, but at the same time, instantly the impact you get from him is he just allows the other players to play their positions better. Tyreek George puts in such lackadaisical shifts when he plays up top. João Pedro needs a really forward-thinking and like attacking-minded centre-attacking midfielder behind him in order to make the best of his skills up top. Do you know what I mean? Because we've seen, João Pedro can flourish in that number 9 spot. Absolutely, he can. Of course, he can. But without Cole Palmer there, he's looking like he's struggling in it, to be completely honest. So after seeing the outrageous change, he obviously props to Enzo Maresca. He made 3 half-time subs. Now, Caicedo would have been a big part of that because Caicedo is a much better lone number 6 than Romeo Lavia is, so it kind of lets everyone in front of him play a bit better as well. But making that change changed the game completely and just absolutely turned it on its head, and all of a sudden, we were getting cut open a little bit by Forest in the first half, do you know what I mean? But all of a sudden, that just kind of stopped, and we were going. So I think it is time to give Marc Guiu a chance. So the reason I'm confused about this, and I've mentioned it a few times, if you've been watching my videos, you know how I feel about Marc Guiu. He got a lot of opportunities in the Conference League last year and was the second or third top goal scorer. He scored 6 goals in the Conference League last year, right? Yes, that's against lower opposition, but ultimately he can score a goal. He has not had enough chances in the Premier League at all. He literally made like 4 appearances in the Prem last season. I don't think any of them were starts. He's not making any starts this season, and the opportunities that should have gone to him so far have gone to Tyreek George. And that just absolutely blew my mind because, yes, I know Tyreek George did quite well for us at the back end of last season. And normally that was when he was playing as a winger. Yes, he deputised as a striker when Marc Guiu was injured. But with both of these guys fit, Marc Guiu's got to be the choice, surely. I don't know if there's some political stuff going on in the background about him wanting to go back to Sunderland or this and that and the other. We can only speculate as to that. But from the footballing perspective, man, with the run of games we've got coming up, juxtaposed against the fact that Cole Palmer is going to be injured for 6 weeks, it solves 2 problems. João Pedro is obviously the best option to take up that number 10 role in the absence of Cole Palmer, isn't it? Like, otherwise you're looking at Buonanotte or you're looking at Malagusto or Enzo Fernandez, and this is none of these guys' best position where, truth be told, João Pedro absolutely flourishes in that role, but what you lose then is that striker role. As we've seen, we've been trying to put Tyreek George up there. Last year, we played a lot with Pedro Neto, playing as a false 9. Do you know what I mean? And he did a job, but ultimately, it wasn't what you were after. So it just seems obvious, doesn't it? It just seems obvious. We're going to be without Cole Palmer for 6 weeks. Esteval is not, as much as we all want him to, he's not just going to start getting played every game. It's just not happening. Buonanotte is on loan. So even if though Buonanotte's all right, don't get me wrong, I don't dislike Buonanotte at all. I think he's a good player. But I think we focus on the players that we own, right? And the thing is, like, why are we not willing to give Marc Guiu this chance? Like, we can't predict the future. The worst thing for me would be we sell Marc Guiu for 20 mil and he goes and tears it up and looks better than, Liam Delap or other striking options that we've got. Or, we go out and spend, we've bought a mega in. I know we've bought a mega in, don't get me wrong. But, and that's next season, man. We're not going to see that until next season. Do you know what I mean? So why don't we just give Marc Guiu the shot, the opportunity? And if after a few games he's flattering to deceive, then fair enough. Do you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, how can you know unless you give him the chance? That pressing energy he's got is absolutely invaluable, man. It's absolutely invaluable. And for me, it just makes sense. Let me know what you think about this in the comments, guys. I'm an advocate of Marc Guiu. I think he's 19 years old. Do you know what I mean? We love a young player. He's 19 years old and he's really far along his journey already. He was bagging goals in the Conference League last season. He just looks really, really, really useful when we put him on the pitch. And even if he's not scoring, he will allow someone like João Pedro to open up and play better. Do you know what I mean? As far as I can see, that's my sofa manager assertion of the situation. But we will move on to another story. So this is quite an interesting one, actually. When Bluco took over, one of the first youngsters from South America that we bought was Diego Moreira. Diego Moreira actually got half a shot in the team, in pre-season and at the start of the league. Under the Pochettino season, he had a couple of opportunities, but it didn't work out, and we ended up selling him to Strasbourg at the beginning of last season. I think we loaned him in the Pochettino season. We sold him at the beginning of last season. So what happened there is we sold him for 1.7 mil. So peanuts. Do you know what I mean? Absolute peanuts. We sold him for nothing. And that is in itself kind of like a loan. Do you know what I mean? Because it doesn't take up an international spot or nothing like that, but it's so cheap that if we ever want to buy him back, it's going to cost us nothing. So he got a goal and an assist against PSG in Liga quite recently in what was a very, very hard fought match where Strasbourg got a 3-0 draw at PSG. Now they were 3-1 up. I think it was at half time. So it was a real shame that they didn't, hold on to that. But at the end of the day, it's a team full of like kids and Chelsea academy players and stuff. Do you know what I mean? And they're going toe to toe with PSG in their backyard. So that was really, really interesting. Right now, I like this idea because recently we have seen like there's been a lot of talk about like Kenan Yildiz, and there's been a lot of talk about a guy from Köln in Germany. I can't remember his name, Said Mahler, I think it is. But ultimately, we're looking at maybe going out and spending big money on these wingers again. But if Diego Moreira is doing well at Strasbourg, then why not just go back and get him? Do you know what I mean? Like, for instance, he's a left-footed right winger. Well, I say he's a left-footed right winger. He's actually been playing in the half space behind the striker on the left, basically as a byline winger. So he's kind of got like, he plays a bit like Pedro Neto does when Pedro Neto's on the left. Do you know what I mean? And even though he's in that half space, he is generally playing the byline role, and their left wing back is drifting into midfield. So it's a 3-4-2-1, but it kind of, goes all over the place. So if we get someone like him, then all of a sudden you've got that extra winger that hasn't cost you a lot and seems like he can maybe perform a bit well. And maybe Estevan Willian can start getting a few more shots in the 10. Be interesting to see, wouldn't it? It'd be interesting to see. But, he looks good, man. He looks good. He was, we bought him when he was really young. I think he's still only 19, 20 now, like really, really young player. And just for the money, man, just for the money, it could be so cheap at the end of the day. If you bring him back and you pay 3 mil for him, which is still doubling the profit for almost from what Strasbourg bought him for, then we bring him in and give him a shot whilst we're having all of the injury issues and everyone's getting sent off all the time. Do you know what I mean? Instead of going out and spending big money. Now, I will continue on the thought train of spending big money, especially in January. The Morgan Rogers news is not going away, man. It's not going away. Everyone's talking about heroics against PSG and, do you know what I mean? But so they are slapping like an 80 mil price tag on him. So this is kind of like asking a question as far as I can see. We've got holes in the squad at the moment. Centre attack is an obviously big one. We didn't go in for Xavi Simons in the summer. Although, the news was going on that we were going to for a long time. We didn't end up doing that. We went in for Fermin Lopez right at the end of the window. Is Morgan Rogers the answer to that question? Are we going to need a solid centre attacking option, bearing in mind Cole Palmer is struggling with injury issues, and it would be potentially foolhardy now to not really reinforce that spot, bearing in mind Cole Palmer might come back, but that injury could be a problem for a while. Look at what happened to Reece James. We didn't see him for ages. Palmer hasn't had surgery yet. He's elected not to have surgery. So this, even though it says he's going to be out for 6 weeks, but that doesn't just mean he comes back and is fine. There's still potentially issues there. So do we go and spend 80 mil on Morgan Rogers? Well, I don't know, man. I really, really, really like Morgan Rogers. I did a massive deep dive into him in the summer. He's got a really interesting style of play, good centre attacking midfielder, good at getting stuck into the defensive work as well. Could play alongside Cole Palmer as well as in place of him. He gets started on the wing quite a lot for Aston Villa, but what he generally tends to do, so most of his starts come from the left wing, but he drifts all the way over from the left into the right half space. Like that is his home where he lives, in that little right half space. So he's not a winger. Do you know what I mean? Like if you play Morgan Rogers in a winger in a Chelsea team, then you miss Maresca's byline preference. Do you know what I mean? He's not going to hug the touchline and, bomb up and down and put crosses in and stuff. That's not really how he plays. He's almost always going to find himself in the centre, kind of like how Cole Palmer did when he used to play out on the right. He always finding himself in the centre. Do you know what I mean? So really interesting one. I like Morgan Rogers a lot. Like it's hard not to, man. Do you know what I mean? He's just an absolutely wicked player. The originator and inventor of the Cole celebration himself, and admittedly a very good friend of Cole Palmer's. I don't know if that's a good thing, a bad thing. Does that affect football relationships at all? Let me know in the comments. But 80 mil in January just seems like a bit of a pipe dream, doesn't it? Like I know we've got some money to spend in January, but I feel like 80 mil is just going to be like all of it, isn't it? If not like most of it, do you know what I mean? So if you spend 80 mil on Morgan Rogers, then what do you do for, the other holes we've got in the squad? So interesting, really, really interesting. Ultimately, the main thing for me is the Marc Guiu stuff, right? The Marc Guiu stuff, like up until January, before we even start talking about signings or transfers and stuff, we've got lots of games coming up. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, next up is Ajax in the Champions League. Then we've got Sunderland in the Premier League, and then we've got Tottenham in the. Then we've got Wolves or Tottenham. It's Tottenham or Wolves. Can't remember which order it is, but we've got lots of games coming thick and fast at the moment. Marc Guiu is fit. He's ready. He's full of energy. I'm not saying he can play every single one of those games. Do you know what I mean? But also, João Pedro shouldn't play every single one of those games. And I never want to see Tyreek George playing up front again. That's just, oh man, my heart can't take it. It drives me absolutely nuts. So guys, let me know what you think about all of today's questions and news. I'm an advocate of giving Marc Guiu a proper shot in the team. I want to see him against Ajax. I want to see him against Sunderland. I feel like those are two good games to give him. He showed last season that he can play against European opposition, albeit maybe not quite as strong as Ajax, but he flourished in that environment. Sunderland, where he may be going back to, seems like a really good opportunity because they are a team that, yes, are obviously ranked lower than we are, but at the same time, they're having a good season and they're making themselves hard to beat. So that would be a good level of game. Also to test Marc Guiu out for 90 minutes in the Premier League. And Morgan Rogers, man. Morgan Rogers in January. I think it's a bit of a pipe dream. Like, I just don't see us going and spending that kind of money on a big first teamer. I just think if we are going to buy people in January, it's going to be to fill out spots, right? Our midfield is looking thin, man. Do you know what I mean? Dario Sugo, obviously Andre Santos. Everyone has been injured at some point this season, essentially. All of our midfielders. Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, Romeo Lavia, Dario Sugo, Andre Santos, every single one of them has been out at some point due to injury. So, yes, we've got a lot of midfielders, but they have not all been fit at the same time since the start of the season. So that's a really tough one. So, wicked guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Also, tonight I will be streaming on the Blue Lounge, the Sunday night streams. We are back doing the Sunday night streams, and it's going to be a fun one tonight, man, because it's always fun after a win. Yes, there are still things to talk about. Obviously, I imagine we'll probably spend a bit of time talking about the starting 11 we put out against Nottingham Forest, and how I'm sure we're going to talk about Guiu and João Pedro and all that stuff tonight as well. So come along and have a bubble with us because it's always a good time. Nice one, guys. I hope you have an absolutely wicked day. I'll catch up with you very soon. Take it easy. Peace.